We are in the final weekend of the Women's World Championship match between Lei Tingjie and Wenjun. And right now, at this point, the score is 5-5. Both players have managed to win one game each, and the other remaining 8 games have ended in a draw. The score is 5-5. Two more games, two more classical games to be played this weekend. And we are going to have a look at the penultimate game 11 of the match. Lei is playing with the white pieces and she opens up here with the move 1e4. It's her favorite move. She has been playing it throughout this match in all the games. In the first 3 white games, she faced the move e5. In game 7, Wenjun played the Caro-Kann, the move c6. In game 9, the Sicilian defense, the 4-knight Sicilian was tried. And for this occasion, Wenjun goes back to the move she played in the first 3 black games of this match, the move e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, Italian game, knight f6, d3. And here, the first deviation, as in game 5, Wenjun played bishop c5. It's the active developing move of the dark squared bishop, but this time she goes for a more modest continuation, bishop e7, which is absolutely fine, but leading to slightly passive type of positions. White goes knight c3, trying to gain control over the d5 square. And now after the move d6, the pawn on e5 is protected. So imagine if you're going to play something like castling kingside, knight a5 is the strategical plan of trying to trade off the knight for the bishop. And this is made possible because this pawn protects the pawn on e5. White doesn't have the chance to take it. After bishop b5, c6, you're going after the bishop, and eventually after the bishop drops back to b3, you can trade off your knight for the bishop. It all didn't happen, but it will help you to understand the following move played in the game, as white played the move a4. 2 ideas. First idea is to grab space. Maybe at some point a5 can be played. But now after knight a5, you can also just drop back with the bishop to a2. So this bishop stays on the board. Castling kingside was played, and here you would expect white to castle here as well. But instead, bishop g5 played. Very logical move in a way that you would like to trade off the bishop for the knight in order to get access to the d5 square. Bishop e6 played. As we know, after bishop takes e6, fe6, definitely black is okay with a double pawn on e6. You do increase your control over the center, getting a half open file for the rook. So instead, white goes for bishop takes f6, bishop takes, and now the knight comes in to d5. Interesting position. Black has the bishop pair, but the position is very closed. So a lot of different possibilities. Personally, I was thinking g6 with the idea to go bishop g7. Preparing f5 is interesting, but Wenjun goes for a more concrete idea. She goes bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, and knight to b4, attacking the bishop. Now you could take the pawn on b7, but there's rook b8 attacking the bishop, and now after the bishop goes back, you can take, and then the pawn on b2 can be taken. Black is absolutely fine here. So instead, white doesn't want to trade off this bishop, drops back with the bishop to b3. And now black's idea is revealed as the move d5 is on the board, trying to simplify in the center. If you take with the pawn, there is knight takes d5, which was actually played in the game. But one important resource also is that after the move c3, hoping that black would go away with a knight, then you can just take the pawn on d5, as the bishop and pawn are hitting that pawn on d5. But black has d takes e4 as an in-between move, attacking the knight. So white doesn't get a chance to take the knight on b4. After d takes e4, the knight can come in to d3 with check. And black is more than fine in that case. So, as I said, e takes d5 was played, knight takes d5. Castling kingside. Black overprotects the knight on d5. Would like to maintain that knight in the middle. Imagine the knight is not there. This bishop would gain in activity. That's something you probably should rather avoid. The knight is now perfectly supported by that pawn on c6. Rook e1. attacking the pawn on e5, rook e8, protecting it, queen d2. And now both sides are getting ready to attack the pawn as white, and black will try to support the pawn. So rook e7, rook e4, queen d6, the queen protects the pawn, rook a e1, rook a e8. Black has a slight space advantage in the center, pawn on e5 versus the pawn on d3. White has a bit of more pressure, but I think it's very equalish in such position. But there are little tactics, and very soon, maybe not immediately, the position has the potential to get opened somehow. White played h4. It's very difficult to further increase the pressure against the pawn on e5, so you're looking for ideas, bringing up the pawn to h6, for instance, trying to provoke any weaknesses in black's camp. But now black just says, okay, I'm going to block your pawn. White goes g3 and black goes g6. So both sides have nice symmetrical pawn formation on the king side. It seems to me that neither side is really able to make a lot of progress here. Queen e2 played. Black goes a6, just a waiting move. Now the pawn on e5 requires still full support from the queen, the two rooks and the bishop. a5. And now I think you should understand that black would ideally play here bishop g7 with the plan of going f5. So let's say you go bishop g7, planning to sort of trapping the rook on e4. But now this is the moment to go d4. It was not played in the game, this bishop g7 move by black, but it's very important for your understanding, because now white has an additional attacker on the pawn. If you take on d4, the key move is bishop takes d5, eliminating the defender. After rook takes e4, it's bishop takes e4, and white is a full knight up in that case. While if you just take back on d5, it's time to take on e7. Here we see the power of all the major pieces on the e-file. White is winning material. So let's go back. Instead of bishop g7, queen d7 was played. And I think that's a good move. Just once again, a waiting move. Now the pawn on e5 can never be taken. Should be clear after rook takes. It's clear that the queen cannot take on e5 because of rook takes e5. So that's typical when you're tripling on a file. It's better if you have the possibility to get your two rooks in front and the queen behind. Then you don't have that same problem as we just witnessed. So white has a lot of waiting moves here as well, but at some point you would like to undertake something, and the move knight d2 was played, intending to improve the knight. But now the knight is no longer on f3, so the pressure against the pawn on e5 is less impressive, and this is the moment to go bishop g7. Because if you would play the move d4 now, black has f5, trapping that rook in the middle of the board. Black is in great shape, so no time to go for the move d4. If you play queen f3, there is f5. Attacking the rook was played in the game. The rook drops back. And now, okay, the diagonal is open, so it's better to evacuate your king. King h8, standing on a dark square. King h7 was another possibility probably. White goes c3. Queen d8, another waiting move. Black is okay, having full grip on the center, but very difficult to do something with that space advantage. Knight c4, king h7 was played. Now the bishop went back to c2. You can imagine there are some potential problems on this diagonal. If the position gets opened in the center, that king may become vulnerable. But first, black made another waiting move. Queen c7, overprotecting the pawn. Queen g2, knight f6. And here the move f3 was played. Interesting plan, but of course such pawn moves are weakening the white king as well. Black went back with a knight to d5. Queen f2. Bishop f6. Who knows, maybe in certain cases you can consider g5 or f4 pawn breaks. But whenever you do that, you got to reckon with d4 ideas. For instance, in a game that followed king g2, and if you would play here g5 was not played, there's h takes, bishop takes, and here the key move is d4 and full pressure against both the pawn on e5 and the pawn on f5. So the timing of such pawn break is the key here. Black dropped back with a queen to d8, rook h1. overprotecting the pawn on h4. Because one of the ideas for black here, for instance, is f4. And now you don't want to allow a knight coming in to f4. So one idea is to play g4, trying to keep things closed on the king side. And here the rook, together with the queen, keeps the pawn on h4 very well defended. It's a very sharp position. This could have happened, but instead, rook e6 played. So it's a slow maneuvering game. Both sides are looking for their own chances at the right moment. King f1. What is white planning to do? Well, ideally the king is probably better off on b1. If that's in such maneuvering games, a king walk to the other side of the board is a very typical strategy, because the king will be safe there, and that enables yourself to look for pawn breaks. f4, g4, d4, combination of these pawn breaks will give white possibilities to attack the opponent's king, while its own king is absolutely safe on the other side. But the king is not there yet. Let's see what happens. Black went king g7, king to e1, and here black played rook h8. Once again, looking for ideas based on g5, I suppose. Here, white continued her plan here with the move king d1. And for instance, if you go for g5, which I believe was the idea of placing the rook on h8, the plan is to meet it with pawn takes, bishop takes. Look at this rook on e6, it's unprotected, and we exploit it with the move f4, attacking the bishop. Pawn cannot capture because the rook is unprotected. So g5 not possible, but if you play a slow move, let's say you go queen c7, white get exactly what she's been aiming for. You place your king on a safe spot, the rook will come here. The idea is maybe to go queen c5, and at some point pawn break will come. White is a bit better, far from simple, but it's a small success. And black realized that this is the moment to trying to thwart white's intentions here with the move e4, opening up the center. As the white king is there, f takes e4 played, f takes e4. And now if you would play d takes e4, take the pawn, the d file is open. So there's knight e3 with a double check. In case of king c1, it's knight takes c4, game over. Black is a piece up. So the d pawn cannot leave its file. King c1 played, very sensible decision to move the king away. And obviously, if you do take on d3, once again, the rook on e6 is unprotected. So black is not recommended to do that. e3 was played in the game, and now things are getting very interesting. This pawn can just be taken. And it should also be clear, by the way, that if you don't do something with your e-pawn, this pawn can just be taken because the king has left the d-file. So white is threatening to take the pawn. Black goes e3, attacking the queen. You can just go queen g2 and play rook he1, consolidating your position. It's interesting position. Anything can happen. White is okay. But knight takes e3 was played, and that's a pawn. But wait a second, what is going on? Black missed a small opportunity here with this move. Bishop to g5. This is absolutely insane. You're placing the bishop on the square where you thought it was not able to go to. But the point is that after h takes, you take with the queen and you're setting up a massive pin against the knight. After rook h2 e1, don't play rook h e8, because after king d2, you're piece up as white and the knight on e3 has been sufficiently defended. But the trick, this was probably overlooked by both players, is rook f8, attacking the queen. If the queen goes away to g1, the rook will come in to f3, hitting the knight from the side. The only additional way of protecting that knight on e3 is king d2. But now if the rook takes g3, you're threatening to take the queen. You're keeping the pressure against the knight. After queen f2, it's time to take on e3. Rook takes e3, and there's rook g2. You pick up the queen thanks to a skewer. I think this is a very interesting line. Should be said that queen g1 is a bad move, and maybe queen h2 could be played. But in that case, black can decide between whether to take with the rook or with a knight on e3. You're regaining the material with the somewhat slightly better prospects. But it didn't happen. Rook h e8 was played, rook h e1. All the pieces got swapped here at this point. Rooks were traded first. And then we get a queen and bishop endgame. Opposite colored bishops, queen takes pawn. So material is even again. White goes d4, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. Now a queen check is absolutely harmless. You block with the bishop and the queen is absolutely misplaced in the corner. So don't do that. Instead, a much better way of playing for black here is queen d5. Centralization, key idea in a lot of queen endgames. Queen d3. Attacking the pawn on g6, and well, if you can take that pawn, you probably will win the bishop as well. So that's something black doesn't want to allow. Queen h1 check, king d2, queen check again, and seems as if neither side is really able to avoid the repetition of moves. So here the players agree to a draw. It's 5.5, 5.5 with one more game to go tomorrow. In game 12, everything is going to be decided. Do we get a new world champion, or will the reigning world champion retain her current title, Wenjun? Let's see what's going to happen. In case the game will end in a draw, we will get to see a tiebreak on Sunday. So that's probably going to be very exciting as well. And of course, I will cover the final game, the climax of this Women's World Championship match on my own channel. So please make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I see you soon again. Bye bye.